The first wave came without a sound. No explosions, no warnings, just darkness. Satellites blinked out. Grids went dead. Cities froze mid-breath, powerless, stunned. And Earth's planetary defense systems, the pride of the coalition, flatlined in a synchronized cascade. One moment they were online. The next, silent. The Zarkelians thought they'd won. They'd spent decades studying Earth's defenses, probing, testing, waiting for a moment when humanity's overconfidence would leave the sky exposed. The moment came, and they struck. From orbit, Zarkelian Command watched the blackout unfold in real time. General Krizith clicked his mandibles in satisfaction. They are blind, deaf, disarmed. A tech officer confirmed. 74% of Earth's military energy grid has been neutralized. Primary launch silos, gone. Orbital arrays, fried. Urban sectors have no power routing. The general grinned. Initiate ground sweep. Collect specimens. Burn resistance. The fleet descended. They never saw the tractors coming. Down on Earth, specifically in Pine Hollow, Kansas, 78-year-old Marvin Gramps Wallace sat on his porch in the dark, drinking iced tea and watching the sky shimmer with alien fire. "You seeing this, Dolores?" he asked. Dolores didn't answer. She'd been dead 10 years, but the porch swing still creaked like she used to. Marvin stood, stretched, cracked his neck, and grabbed the remote dangling from his belt. He clicked it. Across the field, the old barn rumbled. At first glance, it looked like any other barn. Red paint, lopsided weather vane, rusting hay baler parked beside it. But now, the ground beneath it trembled. Then the silo rose. 12 stories of steel and hellfire disguised under a rotting tin roof. The missile launched 30 seconds later, straight through a Zarkelian scout ship. Gramps grunted. "That's for the corn tax, you glow-stick bastards." 1,000 miles away, in a quiet grove of apple trees in Vermont, a 12-year-old girl named Maisie Taylor climbed out of bed and hit a glowing red switch beneath her family's root cellar. The orchard split open. Anti-orbital railguns rose between the trees like mechanical roots finally blooming. The nearest weapon, housed in what used to be an apple juice processing shed, locked onto a Zarkelian drop pod. Maisie put on earmuffs. The cannon roared. Within 2 hours, over 4,000 similar activations rippled across the globe. Barns unfolded into missile racks. Chicken coops became launch command bunkers. Grain silos transformed into heavy artillery turrets. Every country road and dusty backlot was suddenly lit with muzzle flash and vengeance. Because Earth had never trusted Central Command, they'd gone full distributed retaliation. And the farms? That was the cover. Because no one invades what they think they already broke. At Earth Regional Command, buried a mile under a mountain in Colorado, Colonel Abrams stared at a wall of monitors, each flickering to life with local defense node activation reports. "We're back online," one officer gasped. "Not the grid, not the cities." The county's Abrams lit a cigar with a shaking hand. "It worked. Damn it, the FarmNet worked." Another officer blinked. "You mean Operation Strawhot?" "Hell yeah," Abrams grinned. "Power was never cut. We gave it to the farmers." He leaned back in his chair and watched another barn launch a MIRV from what looked like a water trough. "They thought we were soft," he muttered. "Thought we'd fold." He took a long puff, smiling through the smoke. They forgot who grows the food. In orbit, Zarkelian fleet control was no longer calm. "Multiple retaliatory launches detected," shouted a panicked analyst, "but not from military bases, from farmlands, scattered, everywhere." General Krizith stormed to the screen. "That's impossible. Their defense grid is crippled." "No, sir," the analyst whimpered. "Their grid is feral." The general stared at the map. Hundreds, thousands of red blips lighting up across continents, all from civilian zones. "Impossible," he repeated. Then one final alert scrolled across the screen. "Incoming from Iowa." The feed cut. Back in Pine Hollow, Gramps watched another Zarkelian cruiser spiral from the sky. "Tell me again how we're helpless," he muttered to no one. Behind him, the barn reloaded, and below his porch, the earth hummed with redirected power lines, routed not through the capital, but through cow fields, chicken runs, and 70 years of human suspicion. The war wasn't over. It was just getting localized. The thing about Earth's farmers? They don't forget. Not the weather, not the soil, and sure as hell not the time someone tried to turn off their planet and call it a victory. So when the aliens blacked out the cities, humans in the hills, the plains, the deserts, they just flipped the switch to Plan B. Because on Earth, every barn is a backup plan. Colonel Abrams paced the dim control chamber of Earth Regional Command, watching the world light up in reverse. "We've got rural power nodes back online in 37 regions," reported Lieutenant Fields. "No city grid, no satellites, but local militia command is flowing through. Get this, old landline relays and analog radio." Another tech turned from their screen. "Sir, there's a guy in Nebraska running his defense net through a ham radio club." Abrams blinked. "Is that even possible?" "It shouldn't be, but it's working." On screen, a live feed from northern Canada showed a cabin-sized ice fishing hut opening like a flower, revealing a repurposed orbital strike laser mounted on a moose trailer. A hand-drawn sign was barely visible next to it. "Don't tread on Alberta." Back in orbit, Zarkelian General Krizith was discovering a new emotion: dread. "We're detecting coordinated counterattacks, but none are coming from traditional military command. They're all decentralized." The analyst zoomed in on Earth's surface: farm fields, backwoods, grain depots, each lighting up with weapons fire, energy pulses, and cold-blooded Earth vengeance. "Who designed this?" the general hissed. The analyst shrugged. "Someone paranoid." 3 Zarkelian cruisers were taken out by a herd of cattle. Technically, it was the multi-missile emplacement hidden beneath the pasture. But on thermal, the incoming scan showed only cows. When the barn's roof opened and launched 6 hypersonic warheads, one alien officer actually screamed, "The cows are armed!" They weren't, but the land was. And on Earth, land means farmers. And farmers don't waste time with negotiations once you scorch their wheat. In East Texas, a crop-dusting plane soared over burned-out fields, manned by an old man named Hector Ruiz and his teenage granddaughter Sophia. Strapped to the wings, twin railgun cannons disguised as fertilizer tanks. Down below, a Zarkelian patrol scattered as a sonic boom split the sky. Sophia, riding shotgun with a pair of headphones on, shouted over the roar, "Is this even FAA approved?" Hector pulled a lever. The guns fired. "Darlin', I am the FAA today." The coalition command, monitoring Earth's recovery from off-world, was speechless. An Andaran diplomat stood, slack-jawed, watching grainy video of a silo disguised as a pumpkin patch vaporize a landing craft. "This was your backup plan?" General Nornak of Earth's military delegation nodded once. "It's called Operation Strawhot." "And you gave command to civilians?" "No," Nornak said. "We didn't give it to them. We got out of their way." Meanwhile, in a barn in southern Indiana, a man known only as Uncle Pete was flipping switches like he was lighting up a Christmas tree. The interior lit red, green, and orange. Behind him, 4 teenagers held rifles, 1 dog carried grenades in its vest, and a goat stood motionless near a panel marked "Last Resort." A local militia member leaned in. "Pete, you really wired up the grain silo?" Pete stared back. "I wired up 3. The one you're standing on's the decoy." The man stepped off real fast. Zarkelian forces attempted one last tactic, remote energy dampeners meant to neutralize human retaliatory fire. They targeted known coordinates for former defense stations. They forgot one thing. Earth stopped broadcasting coordinates months ago, because Earth didn't trust its own satellites anymore. They'd built new comm networks underground, through copper wire, through fire towers, through the damned postal service if they had to. Every village had its own node, every farmhouse a fallback frequency. In Arizona, a retired radio technician named Judy slid a dusty old switchboard across her desk and picked up the receiver. "Straw-hot control to all units," she said, voice crackling across decades-old wires. "Power's hot. Let 'em burn." 5 seconds later, a Zarkelian gunship exploded over Flagstaff. The headlines would later read, "Alien forces crippled Earth's defenses and triggered a planet-wide agricultural uprising." The truth? We weren't crippled, we were just quiet, and we'd spent the silence rewiring the planet, not to survive, to retaliate. The first Zarkelian to set foot in rural West Virginia was shot by a scarecrow, or more accurately, through the scarecrow, by the triple-barrel autocannon built into its wooden ribcage. The cannon didn't just vaporize the alien, it chewed through the nearby landing pod and sent 3 others running back to orbit with thermal burns and a note duct-taped to one of their helmets. The note said, "Welcome to Earth, y'all done messed up." By the end of day 4, the aliens had stopped targeting power plants because they realized, too late, the power grid was a decoy. They hadn't crippled our systems. We had fed them fake ones. The lights they disabled, redundant. The satellites they crashed, old and already replaced with cloud-launched micro-orbitals built in shipping containers by hobbyists in Kansas and Eastern Europe. Even the so-called military blackout was part of the script. Humanity had a master plan, and it read like a revenge fantasy wrapped in barbed wire. It wasn't centralized, it was personal. Back at Earth Regional Command, Colonel Abrams leaned over the comms desk and lit another cigar. The smoke curled under the flickering red lights of a half-working monitor system. "Status report." "Sir," Lieutenant Field said, tapping through reports. "Every continent has fully rerouted defense control to local nodes. 96% of the world's functioning firepower is now being directed from non-military infrastructure." Abrams raised a brow. "Define non-military." "Sir, that includes breweries, grain silos, lumber mills, high school basements, old Cold War bunkers, a retired amusement park in Osaka, and," he blinked, "someone appears to be coordinating counter-aircraft strategy from a Waffle House in Georgia." Abrams chuckled. "Then we're finally doing it right." In Montana, a team of sheep herders deployed a localized EMP burst from inside a hollowed-out windmill. It knocked out 3 drones and a lander before the first alien even touched the ground. One of the ranchers kicked the wreckage, spat on the soil and said, "Now you see why we don't trust city power." In France, an old vineyard turned its wine cellar into a laser guidance control center. Missiles launched from inside, buried oak barrels exploded through vineyard hillsides like subterranean dragons. Each warhead bore the label, "Vintage 82, pairs well with conquest." In Siberia, the Zarkelians sent ground troops into what looked like a sleepy village, surrounded by nothing but permafrost. Their sensors didn't detect anything until the chimney of a log cabin fired a surface-to-air torpedo directly into their command shuttle. One officer's final transmission, captured by human intercept, was translated as, "Why do the houses shoot back?" The problem wasn't just that humanity had turned farms into silos. It was that no two were the same. One barn would launch railgun fire from under a tractor. Another would tilt open like a flower and reveal a vertical missile battery disguised with hay bales. Still another wouldn't appear to be doing anything at all, until the ground split and a turret emerged shaped like a grain silo, its payload painted with the words, "God bless this mess." Zarkelian strategists, once confident in their superiority, began to crack. Not because of losses, because of confusion. They couldn't find the command structure. There wasn't one. Instead, there were 1,000,000 Earth-grown, pissed-off, revenge-primed farmers, mechanics, welders, teenagers, veterans, beekeepers, and weekend preppers, all acting on their own, but working from the same idea. You came here thinking we were weak. You left realizing we never needed your permission to fight back. One coalition official finally understood it. Watching footage of a burning Zarkelian transport nosediving into a sheep pen, he turned to his superior and whispered, "They didn't just decentralize their defenses, they decivilized them." His superior asked, "Then what do we do now?" He swallowed. "We get out of their way." On the 6th day, Zarkelian fleet movement slowed. Not because of supply issues, because they no longer knew where it was safe to land. Every field might be wired, every hill could hide artillery, Every barn might explode. They didn't disable Earth's weapons. They relocated them, from bases to backyards, from bunkers to barbecues, from Capitol Hill to everywhere else. The Zarkalians made one last push, a final coordinated strike, a precision orbital sweep designed to hit what little remained of Earth's military potential. They deployed fire across what they believed were humanity's last functioning strongholds: capital zones, nuclear sites, international comm hubs, urban tech clusters. They didn't touch the farms. They still didn't understand. Which is why the biggest mistake in Zarkalian military history occurred at 0614 UTC, Day 7 of the invasion, when a low-priority scan passed over rural Illinois and flagged a small, unnamed farm for electrical activity inconsistent with agricultural use. It was flagged, then ignored. 6 hours later, it launched a payload that took out an entire Zarkalian carrier mid-burn over the Atlantic. The barn had hidden a trans-atmospheric rail cannon powered by wind turbines disguised as water towers. The cows? Real. The cow fence? Antenna array? The farmer? Still out back, milking goats during the launch? On every continent, the story repeated. In Wyoming, a deer blind fired heat-seeking drones camouflaged as hay bales. In Croatia, a trout farm disguised underwater torpedoes as solar-powered fish feeders. In Botswana, beekeepers used apiary monitoring stations to track and tag enemy movement, and one hive detonated when kicked. The Zarkalian command began to unravel, because their invasion plan had included everything except the possibility that Earth's resistance was disguised as routine. Colonel Abrams stood in front of the global tactical map. What had once been lines of failure were now lighting up with retaliatory streaks. "You're telling me the kitchen supply depot in Maine just downed a destroyer?" "Yes, sir." "How?" "Apparently the owner was a hobbyist rocketeer, used a pizza oven coil to ignite a homemade EMP warhead." Abrams closed his eyes. "God, I love this planet." Kayla Rivers, former sound engineer turned resistance broadcast officer, reactivated her local station in Colorado. She didn't speak in code. She didn't need to. Her voice, broadcast on every rural channel, was sharp and calm. "To any Zarkalian vessel reading this, you didn't shut us down. You just woke us up." And across the world, in barns and back rooms and sheds and silos, humans reached for levers, pressed buttons, flipped switches they'd been waiting years to touch. The largest synchronized launch in Earth's history wasn't authorized by any government. It was triggered by grit. At 1800 hours UTC, 78,000 individual missile launches occurred across 63 countries. Some were scrap metal rockets fired from tree houses. Some were state-of-the-art anti-ship missiles wrapped in tractor parts. All hit their targets. And for the first time since the blackout began, Earth's sky belonged to Earth again. On the Zarkalian flagship, General Krizith watched the devastation unfold, each strike appearing on the holographic map like blood blooming across cloth. He whispered, "Where is their command center?" His lieutenant answered, "There is no command center." "Then who's coordinating them?" The answer came from a third voice, weak, tremoring. "Everyone." The coalition fleet, stationed far beyond the moon, finally received the all-clear to approach. When their ships broke atmosphere, they expected to find a burning planet, battered cities, and demoralized survivors. What they found were survivors dancing in rubble, barns still smoking, missile silos in the shape of grain elevators, and humanity flipping them the bird from every hillside. General Nornak spoke into the coalition command channel. "Do not send reinforcements." "Why not?" came the reply. "Because Earth doesn't need saving." He paused, watching a pair of teens on horseback hauling downed alien drone parts with a rope. "They're doing just fine." Later, in an official Zarkalian War Tribunal transcript, a captured fleet strategist was asked how Earth repelled a full planetary invasion with minimal surviving infrastructure. Her answer was simple. "We thought they went dark. We didn't know they were charging." The final Zarkalian ship never made it to orbit. Not because it lacked the engines, not because it couldn't outrun the chaos. It was because someone in rural Montana, an 89-year-old woman named Edna, who'd spent the last decade calling herself just a gardener, had wired her storm shelter to a long-forgotten Cold War-era satellite control rig. She waited until the Zarkelians were mid-lift. Then she hit the big green button labeled Turnip Sprinkler. It wasn't a sprinkler. 4 kinetic rods dropped from the sky like the judgment of the Old Testament. And just like that, the last Zarkelian cruiser became an expanding ring of plasma over the Rockies. Edna took a sip of iced tea, readjusted her sun hat, and went back to pruning her tomatoes. 1 week later, the smoke had cleared. The last of the orbital debris was still smoldering on ocean floors, but Earth was no longer under siege. No parades, no formal announcements, just farmers putting their barns back together and kids riding bikes past missile craters like it was a normal Tuesday. It was. For Earth. At Earth Regional Command, Colonel Abrams stood in front of the world press, half of whom were still broadcasting from converted shipping containers or cracked greenhouses. "Some of you have asked why the defense grid failed," he began. "It didn't." He turned, gestured to the display behind him. Dozens of images appeared. Barns launching missiles, tractors hauling warheads, cows calmly watching silos erupt from the ground. "We rerouted it." A pause. "We gave it to the people who'd never let this planet fall." The Zarkelian surrender came via unencrypted transmission. No terms, no negotiations, just a 3-line message. "We underestimated your species. We misunderstood your silence. We will not return." Earth didn't respond. "We were busy power washing silos and teaching goats not to chew on proximity wires." In the months that followed, Earth refused to centralize the system. Coalition allies begged us to rejoin the global defense net, to submit to command protocols, to rebuild properly. We said no, because we'd already proven something far more dangerous than unity: redundancy. You can bomb a base, but good luck bombing 1,000,000 hay barns, especially when half of them are built by people who think duct tape is a sacred art. Gramps from Kansas was featured on the cover of Time magazine, shotgun in one hand, remote detonator in the other. The headline read, "The Barn That Shot Back." He was asked what made him rig his tractor barn with ICBMs. He shrugged. "Same reason I keep a shovel in the back of the truck. You just never know." Kayla Rivers uploaded the final log of the battle. It wasn't a tactical breakdown or dramatic speech. It was just the footage of 1,000 barns blooming open like metal sunflowers, fire in their stems, vengeance in their roots. She titled it, "When the Fields Fought Back." It broke the coalition view record in 4 hours. They made it required viewing for all allied species, for morale and for warning. Eli Banner, of all people, carved it into the stone outside a decommissioned missile barn in Ohio. The quote became a symbol, passed from resistance unit to resistance unit on other planets. We didn't lose power, we just rerouted it to the barns. So the next time someone laughs at Earth's patchwork tech, our obsession with redundancy, our weird fixation on grain silos and diesel trucks, remind them, we once turned a planet full of farms into a death trap with crop rotation, and we're still planting. Just don't ask what.